Hello everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another one of our weekly Sasaki and Miyano discussion videos. Today we're here to talk all about episode 10 titled Love. But before we get into that, guess who got a gold star? That's right, you did. Here you go. Here is your gold star. And friendly reminder, if you want to get a gold star for next week, then I'm going to need to see 200 likes on this week's video before next week's. And if it gets 200 likes, then hey, guess what? You get yourself a gold star. Pretty nifty, right? Indeed. But for now, go ahead and get yourself a warm cup of tea, get yourself something to eat, sit back, throw this video in another tab if you have to, and let's chill out and discuss Sasaki and Miyano episode 10. And by chill out, I mean, oh my goodness. By chill out, I mean feelings. By chill out, I of course mean screaming about feelings, because there was a lot of them. So it's interesting, right? This week, we can pretty much pick up where we left off in the Yankee Cafe. And they present my boy Miyano with one of the deadliest cups of coffee I think I've ever seen. I want one. In fact, I kind of want a cup of coffee right now. I like it. I like it a lot. But essentially we get this moment where Miyano is sort of still kind of waiting for Sasaki's shift to finish, and so he's hanging out in Sasaki's class in their like little Yankee Cafe, which I love. And Prez basically like what is I forget what they Hanzawa is that his name? Hanzawa, I believe. Anyway, Prez, who you guys know, I've just been every character on this channel gets a nickname usually. So Prez, if you've seen our Fruits Basket content, you know that I like giving characters nicknames. So Prez, so you know, the disciplinary president, he is part of their class, I think. Because he helps out a lot of different classes, but I'm pretty sure he's part of Sasaki and Hirano's class / Oga's class, because Oga's there too. We didn't see Yankee Oga, which I realized that we never saw him, and that kind of bums me out. But Prez basically decides to read Miyano's future. Now here's the fun part, because the tarot deck that he's using is a Yankee tarot deck, which I want now. If somebody could make me that, I'd appreciate it, because fun fact, guess which lovely monster slaying puppet boy can read tarot? That's right, this guy. So I could read tarot. Now mind you, I'm rusty because it's been a long time. I started reading tarot recently for you guys on stream, but I have to have my book nearby because I kind of forget what a lot of the major and minor arcana are supposed to mean. So I had my book with me the second I saw tarot, because tarot in storytelling, when I see tarot in terms of like character designs or in terms of like a general storytelling element, I love it, because tarot is so like up to interpretation, right? Like it's fun to see it in design work or in stories, because you kind of get an idea of what the author is trying to tell you. And there's two cards we see this week, and I hope you'll indulge me because I want to get into it a little bit, because the card that Miyano pulls when asked for advice on the whole Sasaki thing, although he doesn't necessarily specify that it's about Sasaki, but we all know that it is. The card that Miyano pulls is Strength, which is very, very accurate. But the card he pulls is Strength, and Prez says that it means persistence, and that's basically correct. The show does understand what the major arcana are meant to represent, generally speaking. We'll get to the Hangman. It's kind of right and kind of wrong. But with Strength, it essentially does just mean persistence. That's how Prez calls it, basically saying, like, you know, you have to be persistent with what you're doing now and it'll work out. Right? Now, Strength as a card typically represents health, patience, and, well, strength. Those three, right? Obviously, Strength represents strength. But it also represents health and persistence. Or not persistence, sorry, now I'm thinking about what Prez says. Health, strength, and patience. And a desire for peace and protection of others. Strength also is sort of assigned to not be... Like, when conflict arises, it's better to show compassion and grace instead of forcing the situation. And it's funny, because as they're describing this card of Strength, I'm realizing more and more that it kind of represents both Sasaki and Miyano, not just Miyano. Because when we see, like, when we see the conflict, right? Like when, because with strength, a big element of it is when presented with conflict, the idea of the strength card is to approach things with a kind heart, right? Like think of like a brave lion, right? Like, but not just a brave lion, maybe even think of like the cowardly lion. He has a courageous heart, but heart is at the core of it. He's not just going to attack for the sole purpose of attacking, unless the lion's hungry, but you know, this is metaphorical here. We're not talking about the actual animal kingdom. So think like cowardly lion, right? Like he's a bit of a scaredy cat, but he ultimately gets the job done. He's got a good heart, right? Same idea. So the idea of confronting conflict, not with force and anger, but with grace and compassion, right? And when you think about the way that these two met, that tracks, right? Again, I do think that this is what the mangaka had in mind. It's why I'm sort of referencing the like other things that are brought up about the card that don't get mentioned in the show. So now you know that typically it also the strength card encourages you in moments of conflict to approach things with grace and compassion, not force and anger, right? Which is literally what Sasaki and Miyano both did when confronted with conflict, where these kids were kicking the shit out of Kurosawa, and his name is Kurosawa. Not Tadano, past JoJo, you dummy. Sorry, I literally have just been excited about Morikomi, and I think I just had Tadano on the brain, but in fairness, both Kurosawa and Tadano are best boys, okay? I apologize for last week. But when confronted with Kurosawa getting his ass kicked, Miyano wasn't sure how to handle it, so he kind of, but he feels for Kurosawa, so he wants to help. And what does Sasaki do? He walks in gracefully. He doesn't necessarily force these kids to walk away. He doesn't just run up and deck somebody in the face. He asks them to leave, right? He says, go away, leave him alone, right? Like Sasaki literally says, like, Kurosawa, he tells Kurosawa, get up and, like, go get help, right? And Sasaki just tells these kids, like, leave, right? You can't loiter around here. You gotta go, right? And then they kick his ass. But when they kicked his ass, it was still with grace, right? Like, he didn't just go down, like, without a fight. Like, he went down swinging, as we see him do again later from that same group, right? So it's not about force and anger. They're confronting the situation with grace and compassion, which I also think is what they're doing, generally speaking, with their romance as well. The fact that, like, there's this desire for peace and protection with the card, right? Like, strength is... again, as I said, like, you know, it encourages compassion, right? So it wants a desire for peace and protection for those that the card chooser, I guess you could call, the person being read. This card represents peace and a desire for peace and protection for their friends and their family and loved ones. And I think that makes sense given how Miyano feels about Sasaki. But again, I do think that the card is saying that Sasaki is Miyano's strength. Right? Like, Sasaki is his strength. Sasaki raises him up, you know, so that he can stand on mountains. He raises him up to walk on stormy seas. Anyway, sorry, you got mandatory. I have to break into song at least once. But yeah, Sasaki is Miyano's strength. And that makes a lot of sense when you look at this week's episode. Because again, to jump ahead a little bit, I think Miyano, like, to keep on track with the strength thing, but talking a little bit ahead, I think it's important to keep in mind that when the fireworks scene happens, that Miyano actively says that when he's vulnerable, he likes that, right? Like, he likes seeing Sasaki be vulnerable, because when he says, like, can you give me some more time? Sasaki says, I'll be waiting. Right? And he rests his head on Miyano's shoulder and just is vulnerable. And he tells him that he likes when he's like that. Because again, like the card indicates, it's not said in the show, but this is what this card means, a desire for peace and protection. Miyano wants to be protective of Sasaki in the same way Sasaki can be overly protective of Miyano. Right? And Sasaki knows that he's overly protective. He literally says it several times, so I better not see any aunties coming for my friggin' boys or I'm gonna break some kneecaps. Right? So, sorry, don't know where that came from. But it's I think it's good, right? Like, I think the fact that like that card was chosen makes so much sense. They could have just gone basic and done like the lovers, but like no, I like that it's strength, right? Like, to me, I'm like, I like that. Like, these two make each other stronger. They make each other better, right? We actually get to see them holding hands, which is so lewd, by the way, on school grounds. On school ground. Get a room, you two. Holding hands. I'm appalled. I cannot believe you would hold hands in the middle of a school. How dare you? Don't cross this line with your hands. Can't believe you would hold hands. How lewd. No, I screamed though. Like I was like, yes, yes, right? When full Gimli just yes. Ah, that made me happy. And it was the fireworks scene from the opening too. I see you, Sasaki Miyano. I see you. So yeah. The one thing that I will say as well, since I guess we're here, so we might as well just talk about it, is that I used to sort of be annoyed with the way that Miyano was playing things, right? I'm like, Miyano, just stop leading my man on, just tell him how you feel, right? And I'm sure Sasaki, to some degree, likely feels the same way. And for a while I felt that until this week's episode. Because if I'm being honest, I kind of get it. I kind of understand what he's saying now. I didn't before. Because again, you know me, I just want the two to get together and just be happy, right? But the more I think about it, right, the more I'm sort of like, I'm looking at it, and again, I'm looking at it through the lens of the card, of the Strength Arcana. Like, I'm looking at it through that card, right? Miyano, his logic makes sense. Because again, protection, like a desire for protection and a desire for peace, right? So we see this desire for peace when he sees Sasaki be vulnerable, right? He wants to protect him, yes, but he also likes that he's at peace. He likes that Sasaki is at peace around him. But also he wants to protect, Miyano wants to protect Sasaki from himself. Like, Miyano knows that if he does tell Sasaki how he feels, which he knows for certain he likes him, right? We know this for certain. This is not ambiguous. This is not left up, hanging up in the air. Both characters know that the other likes each other. This is very known, right? The reason why that Miyano does not want to just come out and say it, right? The reason why Miyano doesn't want to punch his way out of the closet just yet is which, to be fair, jumping out of the closet is very difficult. But like, the reason why Miyano doesn't want to do that just yet is because he's terrified of what will happen if he changes his mind, right? If Miyano tries it out and doesn't like it, that would destroy Sasaki. That would crush him, right? So he doesn't want to just jump in. He doesn't want to just say like, Senpai, I like you too. Let's start dating. Yay, under the fireworks. It would have been perfect, but I understand why he didn't do it. Perfect timing, but I get it. Because again, he's scared of hurting him, right? Now, at this point, mind you, I'm not really worried about Miyano changing his mind. Because at this point, it's like, who you think you're kidding? He's the earth and heaven to you, right? Like, at this point, it's like, come on now, right? Like we could see you hit the ceiling, right? Like, at this point, Miyano, we all know that you got it bad. And to be fair, Miyano does too. By the end of the episode, he literally says, if these feelings aren't the real deal, then what is? And I'm like, Miyano! He understands. Listen to your heart, Miyano. You will understand. Yeah. I don't know why that was the TikTok audio. Yeah. I don't know why that was the... Ooh, I should do some ASMR. Hi. I should do some ASMR sometime. What am I doing? Sorry. I'm gonna keep that in. So... Where was I? Right. The whole Miyano thing. The other thing that I think is interesting is that Sasaki realizes that Miyano's not thinking short-term, right? Because we know that Miyano's not thinking that way, but I don't think it's something that Sasaki's really put any thought in until just now. Because he's like, you know, he goes to take Miyano's picture, which, by the way, I'm sure I made this the thumbnail, but my boy cleaned up well. Oh my god, Miyano's the prettiest girl of them all. But Sasaki, you know, he's taking his picture at the cross-dressing thing. And again, Miyano looking like a 10 out of 10. So Sasaki wants to take some pictures to remember the occasion. And when he goes to take his picture, he recalls seeing Miyano dressed up like this and, you know, his appearance being different. He remembers Miyano talking about how, like, you won't, like, maybe 50 years from now, I might look different. And Sasaki goes, maybe 50 years from now. Oh, he's thinking, like, long term. And it's like, yes. And then that's when Sasaki's like, oh, like, Sasaki gets embarrassed by it, right? Like, he almost gets kind of emotional over it. And Kurosawa's like, are you good? Kurosawa's like, what's wrong with you, right? And Sasaki basically just says, like, I want to be a really cool adult, right? And I'm like, oh, he wants to be a good man. He wants to be a good man for his man. I would have loved to have seen more of the BL movie, by the way, because they go to a BL movie because of course they do. And it was super cute. And I liked, like, the girls being like, do you think they're dating? I'm like, okay. My fellow Fujos and Fudans, a conversation. I'm positive I don't have to tell you this because I really only see this in, like, fictional Fujos and fictional Fudans, although I'm sure it exists. I just haven't seen it since I was on, like, Tumblr years ago. So I don't think I have to tell you this because, again, we've all aged since then. I don't really see too many new Fujos and Fudans because, you know, I'm just not really interested in making new friends. But of the people that I know, I never see this, and the only time I did see it, again, like I said, was in the Tumblr era, and I don't see this from any of you either. Like, I don't see this from you guys in the comments on other videos or stuff like that. Don't ship real people. VTubers are an exception, but don't ship real people. Don't do that, right? Like, as an example, if you told me that you're a big Uki and Fulgur fan from Hololive, right? I would agree with you on that. I also ship that. But that's because they're VTubers. They're not real people, right? Like, they're VTubers. The people behind them are real, but the characters are not, right? They're characters. I'm a character. Sorry to break the fourth wall, but Mr. Underhill isn't real, right? I'm a character. You can ship me with whoever, right? So it doesn't really matter, right? But don't ship real people. Like, if you see people on the street and it's two guys or two girls, don't fetishize them. Don't do that, right? So when I saw the girls do that, I'm like, don't, you're breaking a cardinal sin here. So yeah, that killed me. I was like, don't do that. But, because, you know, it made Miyano feel uncomfortable, man. Like, and I felt bad for him. So, like, don't do that. Don't do that. But that's pretty much all my thoughts on the whole Sasaki Miyano romance element of the episode. There's other stuff too, right? Like, I loved seeing Prez and Hirano in his angsty Yankee boy aesthetic, both, like, letting Sasaki out of work 10 minutes early so that he can go hang out longer with Miyano. This shit was cute. But speaking of Prez in particular, something interesting happens with Prez. So after he reads, this is going to be very brief, but I do want to touch on this, because after Prez reads Miyano's future, I feel like we should have a talk about what happens after, because, again, gather around, everybody, because we got to talk about some speculation that I have, because, again, Prez, last few episodes, man, Prez been kind of interesting. Prez has just been acting odd. Like, not in a bad way, just odd, right? So Prez, you know, he reads Miyano's future, and he's very clearly trying to help Miyano out, right? Like, I don't think that this is a jealousy thing. It's not jealousy turning snakes into the sea, right? How does the rest of that song go? Jealousy turning snakes into the sea, something, something lullabies. Anyway, Prez is not jealous, right? I think it's more that he's trying to help Miyano. But there's definitely something going on with our boy. Like, it's not... Something's up with him, because he reads Miyano's he reads Miyano's future, right? Well, not so much future, but he tells him his fortune, talking about strength and what that means and yada yada. And then he says that the strength card in terms of romance means a love that ripens with time, and this makes Prez smile, right? And I'm like, that's really sweet. I like that a lot. That he's, like, thinking about Miyano in a good way, and he wishes him the best, right? Because he's like, Prez knows, like, ultimately this is probably gonna go Miyano's way, right? And that's also, not only is that the Prez thinking that about Miyano, I almost feel like that might be the mangaka telling the audience, like, it's gonna work out, just give it a second, right? Like, it's gonna be just fine. Which, by the way, I really need to read their other works. Like, once this season's finished, I will read the rest of the series. Let me know if you want videos on those, by the way. I'll do like little podcasty opinions on like I'll catch up on the whole thing and then do like a whole podcast on it. But Prez then reads his own fortune. And this is where things get weird, because Prez reads his own fortune, and it's the Hanged Man. And he interprets this as accept it without resistance, which again is like mostly right. It's kind of wrong, but it's mostly right. But then he says, my dear big brother. Well, technically he only says, he only like says One-san, or not One-san, he says Oni-chan. Does he say Oni-chan? What does he say? He calls him his big, he says big brother. He literally just says the word big brother, in Japanese. He didn't say my dear big brother, he just said big brother. But the way it was said implies my dear big brother. So this is not a knock on the subtitler, by the way. This isn't like last week with the Yankee thing where I'm like, that doesn't make sense. This is more of like, no, I understand why the subtitler said that, because it's very clearly like a reminiscing type vibe, the way he said it. So I was like, okay, something's up with that. I don't speak Japanese, by the way. I just know certain words. Like I know certain words and sentences and stuff like that. Duolingo, very helpful. But technically, the Hanged Man is not really about accepting things without resistance, right? So technically, this is where I have to kind of clarify something, and it leaves me concerned for Prez. I'm not gonna lie, like I'm a little worried about him, because the Hanged Man isn't like a good card. Like it's like if you pull the Hanged Man, that's not bad, but it's also not good, right? Like it's sort of an in-between card. Funny enough, it actually represents Limbo. So it is kind of an in-between card, right? Like it's not great, but it's not terrible either. It's a card of waiting, insight, and sacrifice. Now I know that last one sounds intimidating, but I'm not exactly expecting Prez to make some sort of ultimate sacrifice. No, but I do think Prez is in a state of limbo. And the way he says Big Brother has me very concerned, because he says that like the way he says that, right? The way he says that Big Brother thing, right? Makes me think that maybe something happened to his brother. Because the thing is, again, to go further into it, the Hanged Man as a card represents, again, waiting, insight, and sacrifice, but more so, it's essentially means to let go of a dream. It means one of two things, right? It means to let go of a dream and follow a new path, because it means like sacrificing your old dream to get a new one, hanging, right? Or it could literally mean hanging around. This is why I say it's a good and bad card, right? Like hanging around as in being left in a sort of limbo state, right? Waiting for something to happen. What if the reason Prez pulled the card is because maybe his brother died and he is waiting around? He's left in a sort of limbo state, right? Because he feels sort of like lost, right? Maybe something happened to his brother. Or maybe his brother's perfectly fine. Maybe the fact that maybe it's that his brother graduated, but has been graduated for a long time. And now Prez is suddenly in that same position. And so he's left in this sort of limbo state, not sure what to feel. So he's thinking like, my dear big brother, because he's like unsure of what to do, right? Like maybe he's left in a sort of limbo state because he's in his third year, right? This is it, right? So now he's sort of like, what do I do? Right? He's just not sure of himself. It could be that maybe Prez had a goal in mind, but now he's not so sure of it. So it might be that he's sort of left in this sort of state where he has to find a new dream, left in a sort of limbo state. Essentially what I'm saying is that the Hanged Man tells me that Prez's mental health is probably not doing okay. And I'm kind of worried. But, you know, we'll have to wait and see for the next episode. I definitely have rambled your ear off long enough, so I'll let you go. I hope you guys enjoyed your cup of tea. Hope you enjoyed your food. If you did, you can close out this tab right after you hear, of course, the thank you to my lovely patrons. But speaking of which, outro. And there you have it, everybody. That is gonna wrap it up for today's video, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to boop that up snoot, share if you care, leave a comment down below, and of course make sure that you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and set notifications to all. Let all of AniTube know that you are here, and if you haven't done so already, go ahead and check out our Discord so that you can actually be notified when new videos go up, and of course you'll also be notified when we're streaming over on the other website that starts with a T. On top of being the best way to get notified for new videos, it's also a good place to discuss with fellow anime fans and stuff like that. So if that sounds cool to you, go ahead and join us over on the Discord, link down in the description. Also linked to the description is our Patreon page, and that, along with the join button right beside the sub button, are great ways to help keep this channel afloat. You will find our Patreon page for as little as $1. You can help keep this channel running. And of course, a big thank you I have to give to our masters of masters, the true legends: Asaki VT, Elizabeth Just Elizabeth, JCran23, Jeremy P, Matt87 Eagle, Shadow Creative, Shiorans, Stephen G, Stevie W, Trapmaster, Trevor W, and Tristan G. Thank you all so much for being so freaking cool. I really love and appreciate all of you guys for your tremendous support of this channel, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out at the end of videos, once again, go check out that Patreon link in the description, or hit the join button right beside the sub button. Either way helps out a ton, and that's it for me. So, until next time, clean your room. Just trust me, a clean room is a clean mind. Maybe do some Tai Chi. You know, maybe drink lots of water and brush your teeth. And, yeah. Have a good day. Bye.